Welcome back, Careblazer. In today's video, I want to talk about some factors you might want to consider when you're looking for a higher level of care for your loved one. So if you're at the point where you're thinking you might want to place your loved one in a memory care facility, an assisted living facility, in a group home, whatever the case may be, if you're in that position right now, or you think you might one day be in the position where you'll have to place your loved one somewhere else, I want to talk about factors to consider that a lot of times are not considered beforehand. So we all know that when it comes to placing our loved ones, cost is a given. We have to consider, how much does this cost? How am I going to afford it? But in this video today, I want to talk about other considerations that might not be so obvious, but by considering these things ahead of time, you can increase the chances of this being a good fit for you and your loved one with dementia. And in next week's video, I'm going to talk about, how do you have a conversation with your loved one about placement? How do you maybe try to convince your loved one to go to a higher level of care? And hint, you're not going to convince them. Because I think these things go hand in hand. Today, I want to focus on things to consider when you're looking for a place. And next week, we'll talk about, how do you approach this subject with your loved one who has dementia. The reason I want to do this video is because after you've considered cost and you've narrowed down your options in terms of what you can afford, it's really easy to walk into a facility and to notice the big fancy chandelier, notice the comfortable, nice looking clean furniture, notice the fireplace in the lobby, and for us to feel good that this is a good placement. But those things truly have nothing to do. They don't tell you anything about the actual care your loved one's going to get. Those things are there to make you feel better. So we got to kind of cut through the superficial stuff and figure out, okay, let me really think about what this facility can offer to my loved one, how they approach situations for me to really know if this is a good fit. At the end of this video, I'm also going to include some resources that you can call or websites that you can look up to help you when you're trying to find a higher level of care for your loved one. I'm also going to include a website where all of the citations and investigations against certain nursing homes and assisted living facilities are there for public knowledge. You can put in your state, you can put in your zip code, you can see what citations there might be against that particular facility. So that might help you also. That might factor in as you make your decision. Real quick, before I get into it, just a reminder, I'm hosting a live class online coming up. I hope you'll join. It's totally free. I'm sharing my Careblazer map system to help you lower your dementia caregiver stress and to help you feel better as you care for your loved one with dementia. There are several times and days to choose from. Just click the link below this video in the description and save your spot. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, I'm going to share with you 5 different areas that you'll want to consider when you're trying to make this decision. Some of the areas might not be as important to you as others. That's okay. This is just to get your gears turning in terms of, oh, that's probably something I want to pay attention to as well when it comes to putting my loved one somewhere. Number 1, quality of life. What kinds of activities are available at the facility? Ask to see a calendar of events and take note if there's an activity scheduled at the time that you're there at the facility so you can see if it's actually happening. Are activities scheduled during the evenings and weekends? Can your loved one go to bed and wake up when they want, or is staff going to require them to be up at a certain time to get ready and to provide any needed care? If they miss a mealtime, can they still get a meal served or delivered to them? How's the dining environment? Is there a variety of food options? Ask to see a menu. Ask if you're able to join your loved one for meals from time to time. Is transportation to medical appointments, grocery stores, shopping, religious services available? Is personal care time flexible and done with consideration of your loved one's preferences and their schedule? Or is your loved one going to be required to get personal care tasks completed at certain times around the staff schedule? Take a look around the facility. Take note if the residents appear clean, well-groomed, dressed appropriately. Next, I want to talk about family involvement. Are you encouraged to help in care planning? Are you informed of changes to their condition and care needs? Will you be alerted if they fall, if they aren't eating as much, if they're losing or gaining weight, if they're not taking their medications? Do you have access to communicate with staff? What are their visiting hours? Do they work with your schedule? Can you join your loved one for activities and meals that are going on in the facility? Can you take your loved one out of the facility for outings and weekends? I think it's important that family is still very much involved. Just because your loved one is going to a higher level of care doesn't mean that the facility should just be taking over everything without your involvement. I've worked in several long-term care facilities, and in both of the ones that I've worked in, family was invited for all of the care plan meetings. So every single resident got reviewed by the entire team every so often. We took a look at the whole picture. How are they doing? How are they functioning? How are their medications? Are they still walking around? Are they using their wheelchair more? We took a look at the whole picture, and families were always invited to attend those meetings. That might be something you want to ask about as well. Let's talk about staffing. What kind of training do the staff members get in dementia care? What is their approach to responding to challenging behaviors? If your loved one has a particular challenging behavior that you know about, you might want to ask them, hey, what would you do in this situation? For instance, what would you do if the person with dementia was constantly accusing staff of stealing things? How do you handle the situation when somebody with dementia has a hard time sleeping at night? Right? If you have a specific behavior you know might be a challenge, bring it up with the staff and pick their brain for how they would handle it. Are there physicians or nurse practitioners on site to address any medical concerns? Can medical care be provided, or is your loved one going to have to take a trip to an outside clinic or hospital to see providers? Does the facility work with hospice and other end-of-life services? Now let's talk about the actual environment your loved one's going to be in. Are there unpleasant odors when you're there? Is the indoor space good for moving around with a walker or a wheelchair or a power chair? How is the indoor-outdoor space monitored? What space is available for family visits? Where will you be visiting your loved one when you visit? Can you bring familiar and favorite items and objects from your home to their bedroom? And then let's look at the level of care. Will your loved one receive help with eating if they start to need it? Are there other services available like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, recreation therapy? If your loved one's needs change and they need more care due to their dementia progressing, will the facility be able to adjust and provide more care, or is your loved one going to have to be moved to another facility? If your loved one has to go to the emergency room, is an escort going to be provided to them? So these are just 5 areas with some specific questions you might want to ask yourself when you're looking at a higher level of care. You might not care about some of these areas, that's okay, but I just want, when you're looking at a place for your loved one, sometimes it's helpful to think about these things to try to help make the placement as good of a fit as possible for you and your loved one. Now, the Alzheimer's Association has a really good in-depth checklist. A lot of the things I talked about are in that checklist, but I'm going to link to their detailed checklist below this video. You can click and download it. They also have a toll-free number that you can call to talk to somebody about your questions about placing your loved one in a higher level of care. They even have a community resource finder to help you see what might be available in your area. Again, I'm linking to all these resources below. And then finally, I'm going to link to a website where you can look up inspection reports or violations against certain facilities. I decided in making this video that I was just going to look up a couple of the facilities in my area, including some specific ones where I have patients. And for instance, one of the facilities had several different occasions where a person with dementia was able to wander away from the facility without detection. Alarms went off, but the staff didn't respond, or they thought the alarm was an error and they didn't do an accountability for the patients. one of the residents ended up dying. Like, if you were to see that citation in that report, that's probably going to alert you that if your loved one is a wander risk, that is not a good facility for your loved one to go to, right? So, and just because somebody has had a report against them, just because a facility had a report against them, doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad facility. You can read the actual results of the investigation and what the facility did to remedy the situation. Some facilities take really good action in making sure something will never happen again. But it's just an interesting website if you want to take a look and see what investigations or reports might be going on in some of the facilities you're considering. That website is below this video as well. So Careblazer, I hope this helps you as you start to look for a higher level of care for your loved one. And Careblazer, if you're not looking for a higher level of care for your loved one, I hope maybe this would help you in the future if you ever find yourself in this position. I'll be back next week with another video. Actually, I'm going to be talking about how you can talk to your loved one about a higher level of care. All right, Careblazer, keep up the good work. I hope to see you in one of my online classes coming up, and make sure you hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already.